Hello everyone, this is Food is a Conversation Alumni Edition, session 54. So what are these sessions about? We are dialing in twice a week. I personally from Berlin or Italy or Hungary, wherever I am based, and introducing some of the ecosystem members who attended any of the educational programs that over the past years. It can be summer schools, it can be the Food Innovation Master Program, and also the Food and Climate Shaper boot camps, what we organize together with FAO. And hi, Lana, how are you?
Hey Julia, I'm very good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I quickly finish the intro and then we go on with the questions. So these, as I mentioned, these conversations happen twice a week. You can follow them on our IGTV and on our YouTube channel as well. And what you need to expect from these 20 to 30-minute conversations, they are very casual. You will get to know the alumni and their local food system, what their goal was by joining the Future Food program, and how do they see their food future. So please, I encourage everyone, post your questions in the chat if you have any. We will make sure that we answer them as well. But of course, we are well prepared so we can also fill the 30 minutes with very, very conscious conversations. So now, without any further ado, I don't want to waste our time and you don't need to listen to me all the time. Let me hand over to Lana Kennett, who is dialing in from New Zealand. And well, please introduce yourself and tell us how did you end up on the digital bootcamp last November?
Okay, thank you, Julia. I'm really happy to be having a conversation with you about my experiences on the boot camp and my story so far. So I am living in the northern part of New Zealand. I grew up here and I've been passionate about food and agriculture ever since I was a little kid. I was brought up on a sheep and beef farm in rural New Zealand. The reason I ended up on the Future Food Institute bootcamp, it started actually when I was living in Berlin in 2018 or 2019, I think it was. I was working for a startup in Berlin in the mobility sector and working for an on-street parking data app. And I managed to kind of end up going out of the passion, out of the food system. And while I was living in Berlin, I was thinking, okay, how can I reconnect with what I'm really passionate about? And I'm not sure how, but I discovered one of the workshops that Julia had organized as part of her Future Food Institute program at Makatala, looking at the future of proteins and smart food cities. So I joined a couple of the workshops and we connected there, and ever since then we've stayed in touch. And I arrived back here in New Zealand in March 2020 and to embark on a journey again of reconnecting with our food system here in New Zealand and looking at how I can contribute to shape the future of the food system here in New Zealand. And I found out about the digital bootcamp that was happening at the end of last year, and had the fortune of being able to join. So yeah, that was an incredible experience. I went into it with an open mind, not knowing what to expect, and got so much out of it. Wow, what an international community of people doing really cool stuff. And it really inspired me to keep doing what I'm doing, keep pursuing what I'm passionate about, and gave me a lot of ideas of how we could be doing things differently, or validating some of the things that we're already doing here in New Zealand.
Amazing. Yes, I was so happy when we reconnected last year to see how this collaboration could go on. And yes, very nostalgic for me to look back to those workshops in Berlin. It has been like 1.5 years ago already. And just to give a bit of a context, the workshops were actually organized around the book series Food Shapers, what are available on foodshapers.org. And that was actually the result or the outcome of the global mission, which was a 2-month research trip we did during our master program with Future Food. And I myself, I'm a co-author of the Agro Innovations in Smart Cities edition. So But back to the boot camp. So you said you came with an open mind. You didn't really know what to expect. So if you would need to describe to someone who never heard about the Food and Climate Shaper boot camps, what would you say, and what were the main learnings you took with you?
So if I was trying to describe it to somebody who had no idea what the Future Food boot camps were about, I would tell them to expect an immersive experience where they get to learn from people from all over the world. I believe there was 60 people in our cohort from Europe, from Asia, almost from Asia, from the US, from South America, from the Middle East, and down here in New Zealand as well. We heard from people working in policy and startups and social impact work, all with a theme of food, kitchens, climate, oceans, who are pursuing some kind of leading technologies in food production, but also around social impact and using food as an instrument for change, and also climate innovation as well. And some of the main takeaways for me was I've never done a digital learning experience until the boot camp. So these classes on Zoom, again, didn't really know what to expect, but I was totally amazed by the power of collaboration online and how you can really forge some deep connections, some deep learning and deep lifelong friendships, having only meeting people over Zoom. And one of the things that I took away from it was it constantly made you think about, okay, how could I apply this to my context? How could I apply this to my own situation? So some of the highlights for me were hearing about controlled environment agriculture in the Middle East, people growing huge amounts of food in the deserts in Dubai, and also hearing people who are leading social initiatives, getting kids who are in maybe underserved communities to learn and grow and develop by teaching them how to cook, teaching them how to activate their local food ecosystems. And I think, the main highlights were learning the power of collaboration, learning the power of problem definition and prototyping, which was one of the main takeaways from the hackathon at the end. And also, the value of surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded and people who are impact makers in the food system.
Yeah, I'm so happy you mentioned the hackathon, because that was the next point I wanted to bring up. So Lana and her team, the other team members will be also in the future featured in this session. They actually won the hackathon of the second digital bootcamp with their idea Food Planet. And as far as I know, they are still working on this project because they would like to bring it to life. So Lana, please explain your idea and the proof of concept, what you came up with. What are your goals and what would you need to get those next steps running?
So as part of the hackathon, every team is given a challenge statement that they need to develop a prototype of solution for. Our challenge statement was how might we shift the mindset in our food system from unidimensional economic indicators to planetary and well-being indicators, which is quite a broad and big challenge to tackle. So our team, we did some research and we went out into our communities and we asked them, who do you trust the most to shape the future of our food system? And interestingly, from that research, we found that most of the people who participated in our research survey, we had over 130 participants, were over the age of 18 up to the age of 60. So they were all adults, and they identified that children and families were who they trusted the most to shape the future of our food system. And we thought, well, there's something in that. Are we going to end up with one generation trying to hand the problems of our climate and our food system over to the next generation? And how can we intervene? How can we create a solution which can get the generations working together to shape our food system? So we iterated on this idea, and through a lot of divergent thinking and discussions and research, we realized that, okay, it's a digital world that we live in now. How are children learning? How are their families engaging with their kids? How is the older generation engaging with the next generation? And so we came up with the idea, with the solution to develop a combined learning platform, which takes online and offline gaming products to teach children and their families about micro gardening, composting, cooking, and other types of making and growing food as a way of teaching them about growing their own food and shaping the climate around them through food. So we that was the birth of Food Planet. Since then, we have been looking at defining the problem further, because in the hackathon, it's over a weekend, it's very intensive, which is a great way to come up with an initial prototype and idea. But we need to do more, we need to go deeper. So we have continued since the hackathon to delve deeper into this problem, looking at, okay, how are generations working together? What are some of the factors of our education system that are maybe not serving kids and their families? How can we look at developing a solution that addresses some of the climate anxieties in families and empower them to feel like they can actually make a difference in that space? So we're starting to look at, okay, what's the value that we can create in the context of our users, who are children, their parents, and the teachers. And so we're in the midst of developing our prototype. And what we need now to get to the next stage is we're actually seeking funding for our prototype. So we're engaging with some agencies and also coming up with a plan of how we can actually get some funding behind developing this prototype so that we can get it out there, test it further with schools, with kids, with their families, and look at scaling it up. I think that was something that differentiated us from the other groups in the hackathon, is that we are aiming to create something that can reach communities globally. So that's the next step for us now. And Rabi and Sylvia and I are frequently catching up, still on Zoom. Rabi is in Lebanon and Sylvia is in Italy. We're an international team. So I think that's great. We have a different thought and different cultures and different mindsets that we bring to the team. And I think that's a real strength for us.
Definitely. What could be a challenge at the beginning with all the different time zones to arrange the meetings? Now actually an added value, because you have completely different perspectives to add to the work. And so yes, I know you want to launch on a global scale. And now you mentioned which countries are you based in, but where is your target launch? So where are you focusing now? So what is the main research, and what would be the first country or region where you want to roll out?
Yeah, so we're actually still narrowing this down, because where we launch first is going to be very important to the success of the product. We've started to look at some of the factors of the different nations around the world, their education systems, how digitized their education systems are, how open they are to experimentation. So we've started to make a short list, and we're looking at countries like Italy, for example, because we have this connection into the Future Food Institute, who are based in Italy. We have Sylvia in Italy. We know that there's other education programs around food and cooking that have been delivered to kids in Italy, so that's definitely on our short list. We're also looking here in New Zealand around the ecosystem and how we might be able to develop something that's fit for the New Zealand market. However, one of the challenges we have here in New Zealand is that we're very small. We're looking as well at countries like Japan and Singapore, where we also have connections through the Future Food Institute, potentially, where their education system is highly valued. They have a high level of digitization, and they also engage with food as a culture. So this is a big decision for us, and we still haven't taken it yet, but you can get an insight into some of the things that we need to consider in making this decision.
Right. Thank you so much. So everyone out there who is looking for some interesting project to invest in, which eventually will have a big impact, then reach out to Lana and the team, or just contact us and we will put you in touch with them. So yeah, you are based in New Zealand, and as you said, when you returned, you found a project where you could also work on the local food system, which is called Kaipara Kai Hub. And so please tell us a bit about your role there and what is the mission of the hub.
Yeah, so New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand, we are a food producing nation. We are a very small country of 5 million people, but we produce enough food by volume to feed almost 40 million people a year. So most of our food is exported, and we are a country with different regions. The region that I'm from here in Kaipara was typically known as a food basket, and we have three main industries here in Kaipara: sheep farming for meat, cow dairy farming for milk products, and sweet potato, which here in New Zealand we call kumara, which is the indigenous Maori language name for sweet potato. And those are the three main industries. So one of the things about our district is that relative to other districts in New Zealand, economically we don't perform as highly. Our productivity, our output is not as high as other regions. So that results in lower employment outcomes and lower value from the food production that's currently taking place. And so we're also faced in our region, because it's a subtropical climate, with drier summers, droughts, and wet winters, and more extreme climate events. So the project was founded by the local government to look at how we can not only get better value and outcomes for our community in terms of employment, and also to look at how we can make the farming and food system more resilient to the challenges it will face now and in the future as our climate changes. So the hub was set up. There was some research done into what other types of food production could be viable in this area, because in some places we do have very good soils for horticulture. In some places there are some water storage schemes being set up, and we're also very close to Auckland City, which is the biggest city in New Zealand. It's about 2 hours away. So there's some good conditions for actually saying, okay, what are the opportunities to start to shape the future of the Kaipara food system? So over 20 different crops were identified outside of the current ones that are growing now that could be viable to look at how we can build some higher value chains and industries, but also in a way that is sustainable for our water systems, our soils, and our biodiversity, and also for the communities here who will participate in our food production. So things that were identified were soybeans, hemp, different berries, other types of milk production like goat milk and sheep milk, things like, because of our subtropical climate, things like bananas and pineapples may be viable in the future. And one of the interesting ones is also peanuts. So our hub team, we engage with our community and we go out and ask people who are maybe looking at doing things differently, so who we call our early adopters, and asking them what success looks like to them. And for people that are wanting to try new things, we connect them in with knowledge, information, research, other agencies that can support them, and look at how we can build pathways to market for some of these different crops. And we also, one of the highlights this year has been doing a trial project with Plant and Food Research and Pix Peanut Butter, which is a famous peanut butter brand here in New Zealand, trialing growing peanuts here in our district. Because of our unique climate, we're able to grow them. So this is the space that we work in, and we're very early in our journey, and we're looking to the future and wondering and thinking how we can continue to create value for the community and actually seek the outcomes that the project was set up with those in mind.
Amazing. I think these solutions or ideas should be replicated in multiple different regions, especially to bring back biodiversity and also ensure the livelihood of the local communities. So that kind of leads us into the final question, what I always ask from everyone at the end of these sessions. And that's about your utopistic. So you don't need to think about any barriers. How would you imagine your preferred food future?
So I thought about this question. My preferred food future, there's two scenarios. So here in New Zealand, we have a big export economy, and then we also have our domestic food system. So we have to maybe look at those two things slightly differently because they're two different contexts. So we need to keep exporting food because we produce high quality food for people overseas. And that food system for the future that I would like to see would be that we can continue to supply high quality, safe and nutritious food to overseas consumers who may not have those options in their country, and also in a way where we have zero emission supply chains. So how can we redesign our supply chain so that there's zero emission? And also looking to ensure that that food that we export overseas is actually returning to our country where it's produced in a regenerative way, so preserving our biodiversity, improving our soil biodiversity and topsoil and soil health, and regenerating and ensuring that our waterways are kept clean, and also delivering social equity to the communities that that food is produced in. In our domestic food system, I would love to see local supply chains where people have access, everybody has access to healthy and nutritious food, and that the way in which food is produced is contributing to people's livelihoods in an equitable and prosperous way.
Very well thought through. Thank you so much. It was well summarized. And now I think with both of your projects, what you just mentioned, you are actually working towards these food futures. So let's see what the next years bring. And well, I'm sure I will be in touch with you and the team as well. And for those who joined us a bit later, don't worry, this session will be posted on our IGTV, so you will be able to watch it anytime along with the other 53 interviews we have done before. And please stay tuned because the next session is next Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Central European Time. And Lana, thank you so much for sharing this half an hour with me today and sharing your story. And we see each other very soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Julia. It was really nice.
Yes, as always. Thank you.
See you
Bye-bye.
soon.